They said Rosalind Fairfax had gone mad, and for 3 long years the world believed them. But madness, she learned in silence, was simply the name they gave women who refused to be quiet. She remembered the exact moment her life became a locked room. It was the fall of her 22nd year, when the trees around Holloway House burned red and gold, and the air smelled of dying leaves. Her father had been dead only 6 weeks. Grief still sat heavy in her chest, thick and unmoving, like a stone she could not swallow. She did not yet know that grief would soon become the smallest of her burdens. Holloway House stood on the edge of a quiet town outside Boston. Old money and older walls. Rosalind had grown up there believing it was a place of safety. That belief died with her father. Her stepmother, Vivian Fairfax, had married her father when Rosalind was 17. Vivian was beautiful in a sharp way, like winter sunlight that looked warm but burned on contact. Rosalind had tried to love her, or at least understand her, but Vivian had never wanted affection. She wanted security, control, and the name Fairfax, a name that opened doors in society. When Rosalind's father died, Vivian wanted everything he left behind. But her father had loved his daughter more than Vivian ever guessed. In his final will, written carefully and signed with shaking hands, he left the fortune and the house to Rosalind. There was only one condition. The inheritance would pass to her fully once she married. Until then, Vivian would act as guardian of the estate, but she could not touch the money itself. The fortune waited, locked away, beyond Vivian's reach. Rosalind did not understand then how dangerous it was to stand between a woman like Vivian and the thing she wanted most. The first signs came quietly. Vivian began to speak of Rosalind's odd habits to guests. She mentioned that Rosalind read late into the night, as if books were a symptom of sickness. She spoke softly about Rosalind's grief, suggesting it was unnatural, excessive. She pointed out Rosalind's refusal to attend dinners and social gatherings, twisting mourning into proof of weakness. The servants listened, and servants believe the one who pays them. Then came the doctor. Dr. Hartley arrived on a gray November morning with a black bag and a calm smile. Rosalind was called into the parlor where Vivian sat with her hands folded, playing the role of a worried mother. The doctor asked questions that felt like traps. Did she hear voices? Did she feel detached from reality? Did the world sometimes feel unreal? Rosalind answered honestly. She spoke of grief, of waking in the night forgetting her father was gone, of books being easier company than shallow conversation. She did not know that honesty would be used as a weapon. Dr. Hartley nodded, wrote notes, and then spoke, not to Rosalind, but to Vivian. He used words like hysteria and melancholia. He spoke of delicate nerves and fragile minds. He recommended rest and seclusion. Vivian agreed with tears in her eyes that Rosalind now knew were tears of victory. That night, 2 unfamiliar servants escorted Rosalind up a narrow staircase she had rarely used, into the attic wing of the house. The room had once belonged to a governess long gone. The door closed behind her, and the lock turned. That sound stayed with her for years. Rosalind screamed. She pounded the door until her hands bruised. She demanded to see Vivian. No one came. The servants had been told she was dangerous. Meals were left outside her door. No one spoke to her. She became a ghost in her own home. A bed, a chair by the window, a small desk, books. The window looked out over the garden she once walked freely. Beyond it, a road stretched toward town, a road she could no longer take. Vivian had been careful. She did not chain Rosalind or throw her into darkness. She simply removed her from the world. Seasons passed. Winter turned the garden white. Spring brought green again. Rosalind read every book she was given. She wrote letters that were never sent. Slowly, she understood the plan. Vivian could not take the fortune herself, but she could control the man who did. If Rosalind married someone chosen by Vivian, the money would pass to him, and that man, grateful and desperate, would obey. Rosalind would remain locked away, a wife in name only. Vivian searched carefully. She wanted a man with debt, with scandal, with no power to refuse. 3 years passed. Rosalind learned patience. She learned silence. She became a woman made of waiting. Then, one stormy evening, Footsteps climbed the attic stairs that did not belong to any servant. The door opened. Vivian stood there, older now, lines sharp around her mouth. Behind her stood a tall man with dark hair and a rigid posture. His face was controlled, unreadable. Vivian smiled. "Rosalind," she said. "Meet your husband, Mr. Edmund Ashworth." The words felt distant, unreal, married by proxy, without her knowledge, without her consent. Vivian explained cheerfully that Edmund would receive the fortune as her husband. In return, Rosalind would remain where she was, cared for and out of the way. The marriage existed only on paper. Edmund said nothing. He did not look at Rosalind like a madwoman. He looked at her like an object included in a purchase. Vivian turned to leave. Edmund stayed. For the first time in 3 years, Rosalind spoke to someone other than herself. "You should know," she said calmly. "Everything she told you is a lie. I am not mad. I never was. I am simply inconvenient." Edmund froze. Color drained from his face as he studied her, searching for madness and finding clarity instead. Vivian warned him sharply, insisting Rosalind's lucidity was part of her illness. But doubt had already taken root. "You married me for money," Rosalind continued. "I understand desperation, but know this. You have not married a madwoman. You have married a prisoner." The door closed. The lock turned again. Rosalind was alone once more, but something had changed. She had seen doubt in Edmund Ashworth's eyes, and doubt, once planted, refuses to die. For the first time in 3 years, hope stirred. And hope, Rosalind knew, was the most dangerous thing a captive could possess. Edmund Ashworth returned 3 days later, and this time he came alone. Rosalind heard his steps long before the door opened. They were slower than before, careful, as if each step carried weight. She set her book aside and stood, her heart steady but alert. When the lock turned and the door opened, he stood there without Vivian, holding his hat in his hands as though unsure what to do with them. For a moment, neither spoke. "I tried to convince myself she was right," Edmund finally said. "That what I saw was an act. That you were unwell." Rosalind waited. "But I have seen true madness," he continued quietly. "My mother suffered from it before she died. I know the look it leaves behind. What I saw in your eyes was not madness. It was anger, control, patience." Something loosened inside Rosalind's chest. Belief was a fragile thing, but it was there. "You understand what this marriage makes you," she said. "You are my jailer as much as she is." Edmund winced. "I did not know," he said. "She told me you were content here, that marriage was a formality. I wanted to believe her because I needed the money." He spoke then of debts, of an estate sinking under years of mismanagement, of creditors waiting like wolves. Vivian had offered him rescue without questions. He had taken it. Rosalind listened without judgment. Desperation she knew well. "I need to understand everything," Edmund said. "If I am to fix this, I must know what she has done." So Rosalind told him. She told him about her father, kind and quiet, about the house she once loved. She told him about Vivian's arrival and the way trust had slowly turned to control. She told him about the doctor, the prepared diagnosis, the night she was locked away. When she finished, Edmund's face was pale. "She plans to keep you here forever," he said. "Alive, married, silent." "Yes," Rosalind said. "That was always the plan." Edmund asked why she had never escaped. She explained the servants, the height of the window, the letters that had been intercepted and used against her. Each attempt had only tightened her cage. He nodded. "Then we will wait," he said, "and we will be careful." From that day on, Edmund visited often, always in the quiet hours when Vivian was occupied. He brought books. He brought news. He spoke to Rosalind like a person, not a problem. Slowly, the room changed. The silence softened. He told her about his sister, about dreams abandoned, about guilt that followed him like a shadow. Rosalind found herself speaking freely for the first time in years. Trust crept in quietly. One afternoon, Edmund arrived with tension in his eyes. "I found something," he said softly. Letters in your stepmother's study. Between her and Dr. Hartley, dated before your father died. Rosalind's breath caught. They planned everything, Edmund said. Your diagnosis, your confinement, it was all arranged. He had not taken the letters. Not yet. Vivian was careful. He needed time. Time felt cruel, but hope burned brighter. Their closeness deepened, though neither named it. When Rosalind touched Edmund's hand one day without thinking, both froze. Then she pulled away, frightened by how much it meant. Vivian noticed. She began visiting Rosalind more often, watching, questioning. Once she brought Dr. Hartley back for another examination. He declared Rosalind unchanged, but Vivian's eyes were no longer satisfied. They were sharp with suspicion. Then came the trap. On a Thursday afternoon, Vivian confronted Rosalind with fury blazing behind her smile. She spoke of a hair placed across a drawer, of letters disturbed, of betrayal discovered. Edmund had been caught. Vivian said he was under guard. His debts would be called, his name ruined, and Rosalind would be sent away to a private asylum where she would never speak again. Fear rose, sharp and cold. But Rosalind did not break. She met Vivian's eyes and let her see the truth beneath the act. Rage, strength, awareness. You know I am not mad, Rosalind said. You always have. And now the truth exists outside your control. Vivian wavered, just slightly. Still, she turned to leave. Edmund would be gone by morning. Rosalind stood alone afterward, numb. Then she saw movement below her window. Edmund. Minutes later, the lock rattled. The door flew open. Edmund stood there with keys in his hand and desperation in his eyes. We have to go, now, he said. Rosalind did not hesitate. They ran. Downstairs, through corridors, past shouting servants. Into the cold night. Into open air. The carriage waited beyond the gate. As Holloway House vanished behind them, Rosalind shook with something she had almost forgotten. Freedom. Edmund spoke of hiding, of plans, but Rosalind watched the road unfold, stars overhead, wind on her face. She turned to him and kissed him without thinking. He smiled for the first time. But behind them, Vivian would not stop, and ahead of them lay a reckoning neither could yet see. Freedom did not arrive all at once. It came in pieces. The cottage Edmund brought Rosalind to sat hidden among low hills, far from Holloway House and the reach of Vivian's voice. For the first few days, Rosalind barely spoke. She slept deeply, ate slowly, and stood at the window watching the sky as if it might disappear if she blinked too long. The simple sight of an open horizon felt unreal, like something borrowed from another life. Edmund gave her space. He slept in a small room at the back of the cottage and never entered her room without asking. The kiss they had shared in the carriage lingered between them, unspoken, heavy with meaning neither was yet ready to name. But even in safety, danger pressed close. Vivian would be searching. She would tell the world that a dangerous woman had escaped care. She would use Dr. Hartley's words as proof. Every day was borrowed. On the fifth evening, Edmund finally spoke. Before he had been discovered at Holloway House, he had done more than find the letters. He had copied them, every word. He had sent the copies to a solicitor in New York, a man he trusted completely, with instructions to act if Edmund disappeared. Rosalind sat very still as he spoke. The solicitor had already moved. The letters were enough to demand an inquiry. More than that, servants had come forward. Payments had been traced, and questions had begun to form around her father's death. The truth, once awakened, refused to sleep again. When Rosalind learned that her father's death might not have been natural, grief tore through her in a way captivity never had. Edmund held her as she cried, not trying to stop the pain, only standing with her inside it. When the summons arrived, Rosalind made her choice. She would not hide. They went to New York together. The city overwhelmed her at first, noise and motion pressing in from every side, but Edmund stayed close. Step by step, she remembered how to exist in the world. The inquiry room was quiet and heavy with wood and dust. Vivian sat across from Rosalind, dressed in morning black, calm and confident. Doc Hartley sat beside her, hands folded. The letters were read aloud. Servants spoke. A physician examined Rosalind and declared her sound of mind. Then Rosalind spoke. She told everything. The doctor, the lock, the years of silence. She did not raise her voice. She did not beg. She told the truth plainly, and the truth filled the room like light. Vivian's story collapsed. She was arrested for fraud and false imprisonment. Dr. Hartley lost his license and his freedom. Rosalind was declared fully sane, fully free, and restored to everything that had been taken from her. When it ended, Rosalind stood in the corridor, unable to move. Edmund stood beside her. "What happens now?" she asked. "Our marriage can be ended," he said. "You owe me nothing." She looked at him for a long moment. "And if I choose not to end it?" Hope flickered across his face, cautious and unsure. "I would spend my life earning that choice," he said. "I choose you," Rosalind replied. "Not because I must. Because you came back." They kissed there, openly, with nothing left to hide. They returned to Holloway House one final time. Rosalind walked alone into the attic room that had been her prison. She stood there quietly, then turned and left without looking back. The house was sold. They rebuilt Ashworth Hall together. Light filled its rooms. Laughter returned. Edmund's sister welcomed Rosalind as family without question. Vivian was sentenced to years in prison. Justice was not perfect, but it was real. Rosalind began to write stories of women who survived, stories of silence broken. On their first true anniversary, Edmund took her into the garden at dusk. "I love you," he said, "exactly as you are." She smiled, free at last. They had called her mad. She had never been mad. She had simply refused to be silent.